Hello, this is Dan Humberg. I'm representing HarvestFires.com, and this is an instructional video to help somebody adapt a blower and filter mount for a Firestop kit. This particular one, I'm sitting right now on a John Deere 9770 combine, but the video is actually for somebody who has a late series 9660 that wants to do the installation, and it would probably apply to a 9760 as well if it's the late ones. Late in the production of the 60 series, it looks like John Deere did quite a bit of change to the machine. The engine is actually different than the earlier 9660 and 9760 series. The engine appears to be the same engine as was used in the 9770. Plus, the changes to the rear platform make this one a lot more like a 70 series combine than the bulk of the 60 series ones. I don't have all of the information on all of the changes that were made, but that's my understanding, and the pictures I've been shown by producers that have the very late series 60 series, those machines appear to be the same as a 70 series combine. For instance, this rail up here, is that way on a 9770 and on that late 60 series, but on the earlier 60 series that's quite different there. Also, the hydraulic reservoir looks to be the same as the 70 series, and again the engine is the same. So I don't know for sure about all of those changes, but I believe that this kit that I'm talking about is actually the 9770 kit, but it will probably fit on a 9660. The mount that you're looking at is the mount for the fan and the filter for the air system on the Firestop kit. And this particular mount was actually designed for a 9650 and the early 60 series, and it usually sits upside down and hangs from a larger rail upside down in this area and shoots air up here and then up over the engine. But on the late series 60 series, there's an electronic control unit mounted right here on this rail, and makes it very difficult to use this mount or the 9770 mount that I have that hangs on this rail to fit in there. You'd have to move that electronic control unit, and that's probably more challenging and a little scarier. So it's also possible to mount this system on the back deck here. I've done it once or twice as kind of a custom deal, and this one actually should work pretty well. I use the same mount as on the 60 and 50 series, but instead of the underslung mount up there, we flip it over and it sits on the floor here. Now, it wasn't designed for this, so you're going to have to, I won't try and figure out how you want to adapt it. I'll let you decide it as a installer producer, but you're most of the way there. This is where I would put it in general if I were you. It's got, this mount was designed to hang upside down, but it's got a foot on it here that can be sit on the floor on this angle that supports the floor, and it has holes in it, and you could drill holes here and mount this foot onto this now, and that'll work. This mount will now have the filter. The filter normally is underslung on it. Now it's going to sit on top of this. There are 4 holes here. Right now I've got 2 of them are being employed in holding this L bracket that holds the fan, and that'll be in use when you on yours too. But these 2 holes and bolts will also fix the filter rings. They have a foot on them here and here, and they'll fix that down to this plate, and then there's the circular rings that hold the filter can here. And so the filter can will sit right here. It's a Donaldson air filter, and the outlet end of it will go towards the fan or towards the blower. The inlet of it will come off the side here and shoot right up just inside the back support rail on the back of the platform here. So I haven't brought the filter along because it's pretty easy to figure out how to put it on there. There's 4 holes here. You got 2 feet on the brackets, each with 2 holes in them, and so those brackets go there and your filter can goes in there. There's a rubber hump connector that goes on the filter, and there's one way to put it on the filter. You'll see that there's a cutout for a sensor port on there, and slip that over there, and you put your 5-inch hose clamp that's supplied with the kit on that one. And then there's a 6-inch end to that rubber hump connector that goes onto the over the flange on the fan housing, and a 6-inch clamp on that one. And there's a kind of a bell in the middle of that rubber hump connector. It will allow a little bit of flex, so if you need to angle this a little bit, you can actually do that before you tighten these bolts down. You can fudge a little bit, and that rubber hump connector will give a little bit to allow you that if you need to do that. So the filter will sit right here. It'll connect with a rubber hump connector to the blower side here. You've got a foot on the inside here, and then there's a foot on the outside. The inside one you could bolt down to the floor here if you choose to, or you can add something to it if you want to as well. The outside one sits over the fuel tank, and I don't know that I would use the fuel tank as a structural support for this. You probably could if it's distributed over it enough, but I don't think I would. I'd probably find some way. You could make a little piece to bolt or fix onto this piece and go out underneath there, or you could very easily also support this by taking a piece of strap, you know, a 1.5 inch by 1/8 inch strap, bolt it with the clamshell housing of the fan here and give it a twist and bolt it onto one of these members here up above to support to hang the back of it. One of the earlier ones I did on a 9770 down here, the producer bolted a strap down here and came up around the filter and hung it from the back rail up here. So that's kind of it just needs a little bit of support there. Otherwise the bolts here will secure it in front and support most of the weight of this. There are 3 bolts that hold that thread right through this L bracket into the fan housing, and there are slots in that bracket, and so you have a little bit of flex. You can aim the blower output a little bit more up or down and rotate it in those slots if you need to in order to be able to direct it where you want to. Right now this one's actually directed about where it needs to go. It's going to head up just to the left of the ladder up to the top of the engine platform, and you can see there's a aluminum tube and a rubber elbow coming down there. That's where I would be routing this, and that's where I'm going to measure tubes for and all that stuff. But anyway, you need this mounted here. Now I've only got half of the clamshell of the blower here because it's lighter in weight this way, and I just didn't want to haul it up here when I didn't need the whole thing. But the other half of it would be here, and there will be a hydraulic motor on the outside of it. So that'll determine the clearance here will determine how much, where exactly you can mount it side to side, I guess. I've got it about where I think it's going to need to be with the motor that comes on this blower that we put on this blower, and so that'll be pretty close to the fitting right in here, right up against this. It'll come close, but you got to have clearance. And then there will be 3 hydraulic hoses, 2 that supply the blower that will come from the pump, and I'll measure and get correct hoses for this one, the right length. And then the 3rd hose is a case drain for the motor, and that will drop down through here and tie in right back here. Either any of these are a drain feature back. These little ones are a drain feature, and so they're probably all flat face O-ring fitting. I think this one we could break and put a T in here and T for our case drain to come back in there. So that doesn't look to be a problem. That should slip right in there, and I'll get hoses that are the right length for that. The hydraulic pump, I believe the one we're going to use, although you'd need to follow the hoses and check, I believe it's this one, and if you follow it down, it'll go down to a large manifold block up front that serves a whole bunch of functions for the combine, and that's the circuit we use. We actually disconnect right here. This is a flat face O-ring fitting on the end of this 90, and then you can loosen the fitting here up at the pump and rotate that 90 so that it points backward or up or whatever we need to do in order to get hooked onto it. And then, so we'll take the flow right out of the pump off of this fitting through our hose, bring it back to the motor that's back here, and take the return line coming from the other side of the motor and come back, and we'll go right on to the end of the hose that we disconnect on here in order to route the flow back into that circuit so it can be used by the rest of the combine. Our fan will only add a couple hundred PSI pressure drop to that circuit, and the system will probably never notice it. Anyway, that's the hydraulics for that. There's another, if you need the video for the hydraulics in more detail, watch the one for the 9770 combine, and it will talk about all of those same issues. Here the only issue is getting the right length hoses. Once we have that connected up and you figure out how to mount this thing here, we're going to route the air, and it's going to come out the outlet here. I would probably choose to angle this a little bit if I could. Right now, there, just by that little bit of angle there, it's directed pretty close to that 90 elbow there where it's going to head to. And I would suggest possibly a little bit of angle. Right now those things are misaligned by maybe 6 inches, but it's about a 4-foot section, and those rubber fittings will give a little bit if they have to, but it's nice to have them close to being aligned. So once this is mounted back here, then we can go from the blower to the aluminum tube with a 5 to 4. This is 5-inch outlet, and the tubing is 4 inches. So we have a 5 to 4 rubber hump connector. Again, that will also flex a little bit to allow a little bit of misalignment. It will bend a little bit if you need to. So a 5 to 4 rubber hump connector, and then an aluminum pipe that would run up to here. And I've got this one. It's not absolutely fixed in place here, but it is about in the position I think I would want it in to get to where we're going to enter our enclosure around the exhaust components. Now I'm sitting on a dealer lot and I don't have that box put on the exhaust system. I can show you from up above kind of where it will be, but I don't have the exact location of the entry hole in that. So this is an approximate thing that I'm showing you here, but this is where we're going to go, and we're going into a 90 here, and we're going to turn and go uphill right behind the muffler, or right underneath the back end of the muffler, and we're going to go up in here and enter the engine compartment kind of. And you can see up there we're going up slope a little bit, and then there's another 90-degree elbow up there, and that 90-degree elbow is connected to what I call a stub entry. That's an HVAC, or heating, ventilation, air conditioning fitting, and it's got fingers on that will allow us to enter the hole that goes into the galvanized enclosure around the hot components. I believe that hole is pretty close to where this thing is pointed right now. It may be back a little bit more like this position right here, but those fingers on that fitting are going to enter a vertical wall, a 4-inch hole in a vertical wall of galvanized metal that surrounds that turbocharger and exhaust pipe and goes down and surrounds the exhaust manifold as well. And so we can come up here at 90 degrees, or up underneath here, and go into this 90-degree rubber elbow, turn 90 degrees and go into that little stub fitting, and that stub fitting will lock into the to the box around the hot components. Again, for a little bit more detail on that, the routing is a little bit different, but if you look at the video on how to do the air tube from the blower up on a 9770, we position the fan and filter differently there, but the concept of getting up here is very similar. And so you can watch that video and see how we tie in here. This one's actually a little simpler than that one, I think. I think it will fit pretty well here. But you could find when you get that on a 9660 and you're putting it on here, that this tube might be just a little bit too long, and you can always shorten it. You just cut it off with a chop saw, or if you've got a good power hacksaw. I've cut them with a sawzall, but you got to get something to hold on to it pretty good, and then deburr the ends so that it'll go into your tubes all right and doesn't hang up the air as it goes through there anyway. So we only have 2 aluminum tubes, a few rubber fittings, and that 1 HVAC fitting to get up into where the air is going to enter the enclosure on this. You can support this any way you need to, although once it's all cinched together with the hose band clamps that we send with the kit, it gets pretty rigid, and so I don't know that it's going anywhere, but you may wish to support it so it doesn't vibrate and rub on anything else. I do note that we've got a lot of electrical harness coming through here, and you don't want to abrade that, although nothing that in our kit is particularly abrasive, but you don't want to mess with that if you don't have to. Positioning this up and down this way will help to align it back here with the blower. You do have a dipstick here into a transmission or something like that. You may have to give that a little bit of a bend in order to clear everything here. But there is a path for that air to go up here, then go uphill, and then in behind the engine, and then turn and go into the enclosure around the exhaust manifold. So that's a quick tour of how to adapt the blower and filter mount from a early 60 series or 50 series Firestop kit for a John Deere 50 or 60 series combine. Flip it over, put it on the deck, and do a little bit of creative mounting, and you can make this work fairly easily, I think, for the late series 9660, probably 9760, where you don't really have the option of putting it right here where I would like to put it, because they put that electronic control unit right here and it's really in the way, and unless we could get that out of the way safely, we can't use this mounting spot. But this will work. It just has this tube that's now going to run right underneath your hydraulic fill cap, and it's pretty much out of the way, so it's not a bad spot to mount it. Now you'll also have a tube that will come off of your air filter right here, and you can decide how high up you want it to bring that to take in clean air. There's a top spin intake on the top of that from Donaldson as well. It helps reduce the loading on the filter. I'll measure this and I'll try and give you a riser that I think is adequate for it, but you can always buy a taller one if you want to. It's 4-inch aluminum tubing that you can get from a truck shop if you have one close by. So that's the system. That's the way I would suggest mounting it for this kind of a rare animal. That's a late 60 series combine that looks more like a 70 series. In every case, I tell people, be careful on your combine. There are other things besides the exhaust system that can start fires. You can have hot bearings, you can have rocks, you can have alternators throw a spark, you can have an electrical short. By far the majority, we think of those fire starts at the exhaust system, and so this will cut way down on the amount of smolders that you see if you're doing flowers. But you still need to be vigilant. So be careful, have a safe harvest. If you have questions, contact me at harvestfires.com. Thanks very much.